Alright, so in the last video I've talked about the idea and the philosophy of object-oriented programming. I've said that it mirrors the real world in a way that every software component in your software project has its own behaviors and its own properties. Now these software components should all be designed in a way that strives for encapsulation. That is one of the top 4 rules of object-oriented programming. Now what encapsulation is and why it makes sense to implement it in your programs is the topic of this video. So let's get into it. Alright, so we want to create classes. Encapsulation says that if we're storing some data in our class, that data should be bundled with as many operations as possible on it into the same entity, so long as it makes sense. So data and operations on it all go to the same entity, and that's what makes a class. Let's do an example so you get it right. And this time we're not going to do examples about dogs and flowers and trees. We're doing an actual programming example, alright? Suppose you want to create a linked list. There are many ways to create that without object orientation, and that's fine. But now let's think about what would be an object-oriented approach to create the linked list, the data structure that we know and we use all the time. The most fundamental data in a linked list are the elements, alright? So let's create a class for the elements first. An element of a linked list has the data that it's storing and a pointer to the next element in the list. So the properties of this class would be a variable storing some data and a pointer to another element. In object orientation, we usually don't manipulate our data directly. Instead, we create methods to take care of that. So here we need 2 methods per property, a setter and a getter method per each. The function setNext of next gets a pointer to the desired next element in the linked list as an argument and sets the next property equal to the argument. GetNext function just returns the stored pointer into the next element. And for data, we have those as well. A setData to change the stored data and a getData to read the data. We also need constructors. Those are just some methods that create an instance of that class for us. Let me show you what I mean. For this class, I'm going to let it have 3 constructors. One with no arguments, one with data property specified, and one with data and next specified. And that was it for the first class. Notice the encapsulation of the properties we're storing with the methods we have created to manipulate that data. So it's an object with its properties and behaviors, just like the real world objects. Our element has 2 properties and it has some behaviors. Those are the methods that we specified. Now let's think of the linked list. So we create a class called linked list. In this class, I want to store the pointers to all of the elements of the class so I can free them easily later on. So that's my first property. My other properties could be the size of the linked list, a pointer to the head of the list, and a pointer to the tail of the list. Alright, now let's think of the methods we'll need for the linked list class. First off, let's think of our constructors. I want to allow the linked lists to be created empty with the first head element and from an array or vector. Other methods could be getSize, getElement at index I, addElement at a certain index I, removeElement, and toVector to convert the linked list to a vector. The destructor should also be specified here. It should just free the space reserved for the elements of the linked list when we're done with it. Now when this is coded, I can create an instance of this linked list and use any of the capabilities that I've created for it. So we could say create an empty linked list or add elements to it with the point notation. Convert it to the vector, iterate over it, and do anything we want with it. So that was it for encapsulation. It's very important, and you should always try to implement its ideas whenever you're trying to design some classes. I know it wasn't a lot, but I think it was still worth a video so you get exactly what encapsulation is. This is Algoritmi, and this was episode 2 out of 5 of the object-oriented programming series. I hope you enjoyed this video. Give it a thumbs up if you did, and share it with your friends so they learn object-oriented programming as well. And subscribe to the channel. Cheers.